Hey guys, before we get into the Jupyter Notebook, I just want to show you a sneak peek of the website that we will be web scraping from today, which is Pro Football Reference for the year 2020. As you can see, it's a very well structured table. We have data rows for literally every player in the year 2020. And as we go along, I highly suggest that you click on these table rows to understand their structure, their table elements. So here we have who do we click on? Table row 8, which happens to be Devontae Adams. So as you click into their data values, you see that he plays for Green Bay. He's a wide receiver. He's 28. He's played in 9 games this year. This is the data we want to collect. This will make a lot more sense as we utilize and leverage BeautifulSoup. The notebook, as you will see, is easy to follow, and let's get into that right now. Hey guys, today we will be web scraping NFL data in order to create a CSV file of relevant NFL stats for the 2020 season for all individual players in order to help you guys gain an edge in your daily fantasy lineups or your seasonal fantasy leagues. To begin, we have to get ourselves acquainted with BeautifulSoup. BeautifulSoup is a web scraping library that organizes messy HTML and presents us with manageable Python objects that we can use to insert into data frames, whatever. It just makes the process a whole lot easier. If you have not used BeautifulSoup before, please install it. You have to run this code in your terminal, and that should get BeautifulSoup installed. I have provided supplemental documentation here if you want to read more on BeautifulSoup. I highly suggest it. The more you learn, only the better you can get. The other libraries we'll have to use is URLlib. This module allows us to read data from URLs. There's more documentation here for that as well. BeautifulSoup, which I just described, and then Pandas, which is the holy grail of analytics and data analysis and whatever in Python. So we import the modules here, and then the next step is to create the BeautifulSoup object, and so that you guys can see what BeautifulSoup is all about. So to begin, we copy and paste the URL that we want to get the data from. In this case, we're going to be using profootballreference.com, and we are going to be manipulating this string via the year, which we want it to be 2020. You can change this to 2019 if you want and get 2019 data, or 2018, whatever. It probably goes back all the way to 1960, or even before that, maybe, I'd assume. So here we imported URL open. We run URL open on the URL here with the correct year via the string format function. And then we turn that HTML into a BeautifulSoup object here by calling BeautifulSoup and passing HTML as the parameter. And then if you want, we can print the soup variable. It's going to take a second just to read everything, and there you see it. It's formatted very nicely to the HTML that we want as a BeautifulSoup object. Now we will be getting the header data ready for our CSV file. We'll be using a list comprehension to get the header data, and if you need a refresher on list comprehensions or you want to begin to learn list comprehensions just for practice, please visit this link here. It should take 10 to 15 minutes to really get a good understanding of list comprehensions by following this link. So for our list comprehension, what we will do is first start out by finding all the table rows and then selecting the second table row here. And then within that table row, that second table row, we want to find all the table headers that are located within that table row, and then loop through each one and get the text of each table header. This will return, as we see here, player, team, fantasy points, age, number of games. There's many more. When I printed headers, I only printed the first 5. So now that we have headers, we move on to get the table row data for our CSV file, and once again, we will be using a list comprehension to do that. So to start off, we have to select all the rows. So we use soup.findAll, This gets us all the rows, and we pass through table rows, which we want. But this time we will be specifying the class of these table rows, and we will be using a lambda function to make sure that we do not select any table rows classed as thead. We do not want a table header row. We're trying to get the table row data, the data values, the juice of the CSV file. We don't want table header rows as one of our rows. That's what we had headers for up here. So then here we go with our list comprehension. We first say for I in range length rows. So right, we want to loop through each individual row. There may be 600, 500 players. We want to loop through each one individually and get their data. So once we have I set, we go to rows, which we just grabbed. There should be 600 rows or so, and slice by I and find all the table data cells. And then for each table data cell, we want to get the text of those data cells. And then we, in a nested list, get the player name, team, fantasy points, age, game started, completions, etc. And it's all in a nested list ready to go for a data frame. And now we insert our player stats nested list as the data for our data frame. So we have that as our data, and then our columns will be the headers data that we got up here. And then we can produce the head of the data frame, which we see Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill, Alvin Kamara. Yeah, I'd say these guys would have the most value so far this year. And then if we wanted to get a sneak peek and see the bottom of the data frame, you see RG3, D.D. Westbrook, Kendall Hinton. These guys, well, most of them just haven't played much, but Kendall Hinton, the infamous Broncos quarterback, obviously it makes sense that his value and his stats just aren't up there. I'm going to change this back to head real quick. And then we get into data manipulation. I didn't do much here. If you guys want to add anything here, go for it. All I did was replace the empty strings with zeros. This might not be the best practice in all the columns. You may want to look into using the median or the mean of some of the columns. I think it makes sense for completions, attempts, yards to be 0. If they don't have any completions, they literally don't have any completions. But maybe in one of the columns, taking the column average is the correct replacement for the string, the empty string. And then here I'm just adding the year column as the year that we queried for. And now the data frame is ready to go. So now we can just call the pandas function to CSV, give it its path. In this case, I'm already in my folder. I don't want to change the path, so I'm just naming the CSV file, and that's all there is to it. We have our CSV file. Wrapping it up, putting it all together, I created you guys a function. All you got to do is input the year. You could put in 2015, 2010, 2005, whatever year, and it will give you that CSV for that year. And as you can see here, if we run it, it takes, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds, probably less. And then it will say player data for the year. And here we see again the string formatting. It will return the year. We wanted year 2019. Player data for the year 2019 has been created. So that's all I have for today for web scraping. But this is just the start, right? We want to build an edge, and to do so, we have to get the data. And luckily, Football Reference, they provide us with extremely fast updates on their data, and we can pull from it almost as if it's, live. Like it's amazing. So sharpening your web scraping tools is always something you should look to do. Taking advantage of this free data and trying to get an edge in your daily fantasy lineups and your seasonal fantasy leagues to hopefully bring in the big bucks.